All right, today we're going to break down something I think is really cool, the Module Service Protocol, or MSP. It's basically a powerful, simple bridge that lets you connect your own internal services directly to the SynthGrid AI platform. Let's get right into it. So you've got all these fantastic internal services, right? Your CRMs, order systems, data warehouses, they're the lifeblood of your business. The big question developers are always asking is, how do I let an AI tap into these securely and reliably to get real work done? And, without having to rebuild everything from scratch. The answer, it turns out, is surprisingly elegant. It's a lightweight bridge that you build using the Module Service Protocol. What this protocol does is it lets your services broadcast their capabilities to an AI, essentially turning them into tools that the AI can just pick up and use whenever it needs to. Okay, let's talk about the design philosophy here, because it's just brilliantly simple. The whole thing is built on three main ideas. Keep it simple, keep it stateless, and use the standards you already know and love. Now, that stateless part is super important. It means every single request is a self-contained package. The AI doesn't have to manage some complex ongoing session, which is just crucial for making things scalable and reliable. Here's the core philosophy you really have to get. MSP is basically an RPC-style protocol, remote procedure call, that just happens to use HTTP as its taxi. All the important stuff, like whether an operation worked or failed, that information lives inside the JSON response body. It is not signaled by the HTTP status code. The JSON is the source of truth. And this right here really drives that point home. For any valid communication, even when you're telling the AI, hey, that customer ID you gave me doesn't exist, your service should send back an HTTP 200 OK. Those 404s or 500 errors, you save those only for total meltdowns, like when your server can't even spit out a proper JSON response. It's a subtle difference, but it's key for reliability. It stops the AI from confusing a network hiccup with a predictable business error. And get this, the entire protocol, the whole thing, boils down to just three endpoints. You've got /meta for discovery. That's how the AI learns what your service can do. You've got /action for execution, where the work actually happens. And finally, /data for pulling down bulk information. That's it. Pretty clean, right? So let's start with the most important one, the /meta endpoint. You should think of this as the instruction manual for your service. It's what the AI reads to understand exactly what it's capable of. So when SynthGrid calls /meta, it's expecting a JSON response that looks like this. You tell it the protocol version you're using, you give your module a name and a nice description, and then, this is the most important part, you provide these arrays listing all the actions it can perform and any data endpoints it serves. This is literally how your service introduces itself to the AI. Now here's the really cool part. This isn't just a one-and-done registration. SynthGrid is constantly polling your /meta endpoint, like every 5 seconds. What that means for you is you can add a new feature, deploy your code, and almost instantly the AI discovers it and can start using it. 0 manual steps. It is completely dynamic. Okay, so the AI knows what your service can do. Now let's get to the fun part, the execution phase. How does SynthGrid actually tell your service to do things and get data back? There's a very clear separation of concerns here. Action endpoints are for doing stuff, create a user, update an order, and they always return a JSON object. Data endpoints, on the other hand, they're for bulk exports, like getting a big daily sales report. And for that, they just return a raw CSV file. This brings us to a super critical security feature. Every single action that you list in your /meta response has to declare something called a risk level. This is your way of telling SynthGrid what kind of approval workflow is needed before it's allowed to run, which gives you really fine-grained control over everything. And there are 4 distinct levels you can set. Safe actions can be run by the AI immediately, no questions asked. Machine approval required means it has to pass some kind of automated check first. Human approval required is for the really sensitive stuff, like deleting a user, where you want an actual person to click an approve button. And finally, forbidden just completely blocks the action. No way, no how. So when an action gets executed, the response your service sends back is just as simple. It's a JSON object with a status field that can be success, failure for some unexpected server error, or invalid input for a predictable business logic error. Then, based on that status, you'll either provide a data object or an error object. For instance, a successful call to get customer details would look exactly like this. The status is success, and the data payload has the result you wanted to send back. It's just clean, predictable, and super easy for any system to parse. All right, that's enough theory. Let's actually see how this all clicks together in a real, practical Python example. I think this is going to make it all make sense. I mean, just look at how straightforward this is. In this simple Python web server, the doGet method just checks if the request path is /meta. If it is, boom, it sends back that metadata JSON object that we defined earlier. That's it. That's the entire discovery mechanism in just 2 lines of code. Then for the execution, the doPost method basically acts like a mini router. It checks the path. In this case, it's looking for /action/getCustomer, and then it reads the JSON input from the request and pulls out the parameters the AI sent over, like the customer ID. And finally, after it does its work, maybe it looks up the customer in a dummy database, it just builds that standard success response we just talked about, status set to success, customer details in the data payload, and sends it back. And just like that, the request response cycle is complete. So building the service is one part of the equation, but running it reliably out there in the wild, in production, that's another. Let's just quickly cover a few of the key best practices from the official spec. Okay, here are the big ones. First, security. Seriously consider using a direct WireGuard connection or, at the very least, robust API keys. Second, idempotency. Always pay attention to the SynthGrid request ID header. It lets you safely deduplicate requests so you don't accidentally do the same thing twice. And finally, for your development lifecycle, just run separate service instances for dev and prod. It's easy, just point the AI to the right one. And that's really the module service protocol in a nutshell. It's a simple, incredibly powerful, and dynamic way to turn all of your existing infrastructure into a real toolkit for an AI. So I guess the only question left is, what amazing tool are you going to build first?